Welcome to Sports Management Podcast, where you will hear interesting sports management professionals share their stories, experiences, and passion for the sports management industry. I am your host, Marcus Philipson.
Today's guest is James McLaughlin, the CEO at the charity Cure Leukaemia. And one of his roles as CEO is heading up several fundraising initiatives like Tour de Tap, the 21 Tour, and he also ran 4 consecutive marathons. Before James started working for Cure Leukaemia, he has held several managerial roles within sports. In 1999, he worked as head of sales at Southamptons football club and moved on to work for Nike, Watford, and Warwickshire cricket club. This was a great conversation with James, and I hope you find it as interesting as I did. If you want to learn more about Cure Leukaemia, you can find the link to their website in the show notes below. James McLaughlin, welcome to the Sports Management Podcast.
Hi, Marcus.
How are you doing?
Yeah, very well. You okay?
Always well here. I'm very excited to talk to you today. You are the CEO of the charity Cure Leukaemia. So first of all, what does this role include, and tell us a little bit more about the charity?
Yeah, so the charity itself, its primary aim is to fund research nurses across the UK. So we fund at least 12 research nurses in 12 blood cancer centres across the UK. So a number in London, Manchester, Leeds, Sheffield, Nottingham, Glasgow, and over in Belfast as well, a number of those. And the purpose of those clinical research nurses are to enable clinical trials to take place. So obviously you would have seen and heard in the last couple of years, because of COVID, that the ability to roll out the vaccine at such great speed, that's primarily come through the ability of clinical trials to find the pioneering new drugs and treatments that are needed. And what we do through Cure Leukaemia is that the network of research nurses formed with a central hub of trials coordinators in Birmingham allow a national network called the Trials Acceleration Programme to take place. So when you hear about clinical trials and new pioneering treatments, they're only able to happen because of these roles that we fund. So within the blood cancer community and for patients, these are obviously extremely vital, because a lot of the patients fail standard treatments and obviously then have no other options. And with these new pioneering treatments coming faster and faster, more available year on year, being able to get these treatments into patients is obviously of paramount importance. So yeah, that's what we do. That's the sum of what we do, and it's brilliant because you're obviously trying to find cutting edge treatments that are going to make a difference and they become standard of care for blood cancer patients, not only in the UK, but also globally, because a lot of the findings from these trials will then obviously be taken into blood cancer patients across the world. So it's an exciting role. My role really is to be responsible for the strategy of the charity, the direction, but also obviously primarily the fundraising side of and income generation, and whether that's corporate partnerships, whether it's certain campaigns that we run for awareness. And also it's obviously making sure the big part really is that we keep that really close engagement with the centres and the nurses that we fund. And a big part of my role really is also to ensure that we have close communication where we can with patients as well, because they're the reason why the charity has been formed. So it's vital that we obviously have that close relationship as well.
Yeah, that's great. And as you mentioned there, leukemia is a blood cancer and a horrible disease. Why is this so important to you? Do you have some personal connection?
No, I had no personal connection. And obviously my career up until 10 years ago, when I became chief exec of Cure Leukaemia, had been in commercial sport. And I was the commercial director at Edgbaston Cricket Ground, so one of the main test match grounds, which probably in the world. And I got to know Cure Leukaemia through Ashley Giles, who was an England cricketer at the time, but also played for Warwickshire, where Edgbaston is the home for Warwickshire Cricket Club. And we were just talking about charity partnerships for the venue. And he put me in touch with the professor who's the co-founder at Cure Leukaemia, Professor Charlie Craddock. And I went and met Professor Charlie Craddock and heard what he was trying to do in terms of trying to be proactive in trying to find these cures. It's a fantastic name for a charity to actually say cure in the charity. Not many charities have that vision. And we obviously, I just found that it was a right fit. They were a charity based in Birmingham, where Edgbaston is based, and it just seemed a natural fit. And I've got to know the charity and obviously the main people there for a number of years. I was then asked to be a trustee of the charity in 2010, and was then appointed as the chief exec in 2012. Where it was a bit of a career change, because, like you said, I've got thankfully no history of blood cancer in my family, but it seemed as a good opportunity to take what I knew most probably from the business world and transfer hopefully those skills into the charitable sector. And 10 years on, I'm still here, and we've still got a lot more to do, but a lot of progress has been made in that period.
That's fantastic and really honorable. And you mentioned fundraising, and I know that you have done several initiatives. For example, you ran 4 consecutive marathons. So can you tell us a little bit about your different activities for fundraising and how it's been?
So in terms of what I try to do as the chief exec is, I suppose, try to lead from the front where possible. And over the years, I've done some marathons and done London to Paris bike rides. But in the last couple of years, I've done this challenge, which is the Tour of the Tap, which is to see me run from each of the 12 blood cancer centres that we provide funding to. And last year that totaled up to the equivalent of 4 marathons. It was a big challenge, but over the last 2 years, I think we've raised £50,000 from those events. So it's obviously in the times where COVID has been obviously so sort of devastating for many charities, I felt that it was important that we needed to do something and obviously just raise awareness of the charity as well as raising funds.
That's great. And it's also the Tour 21. What is that?
Yeah, the Tour 21. So Jeff Thomas, who's a former England and Crystal Palace footballer, was diagnosed back in 2003 with a form of leukemia. And when he was saved by Professor Craddock, he went and did the Tour de France in 2005. And over the last few years has raised substantial sums for Cure Leukaemia as a Cure Leukaemia patron to ride all 21 stages of the Tour de France. And a week ahead of the pros. And so we've now done this event the last couple of years, and it's an opportunity for a maximum of 25 amateur cyclists to ride every single stage of the Tour de France a week ahead of the professionals, led by Jeff. And last year, the team that took on the Tour 21 raised £1.1 million for Cure Leukaemia. Wow. And the biggest part of obviously this opportunity is that we are also the official charity partner in the UK for the Tour de France, so recognised by ASO, and we have a 3-year partnership with them. And obviously with that now, obviously hopefully raises international awareness of Cure Leukaemia, because they're going to support us again this year and obviously share Jeff's stories and share the riders' stories, and hopefully we'll exceed that 1.1 million this year. So for us, it's a massive event, because last year we got coverage on NBC Sports in America. There was 3 programs on Eurosport, following obviously just basically 25 amateur cyclists taking on one of the most grueling sporting challenges, I suppose, that anyone can put themselves through.
That's incredible.
Yeah. It's not something I would fancy. And I think what's obviously amazing with this is I've just seen some videos of a couple of the riders from this year. These people who are taking on the challenge obviously have full-time jobs as well.
Yeah.
So they're getting their training in on the back of some very long days and long time at work in a working week. So to find the time to put in the amount of hours of the endurance training that they need to do to be prepared for the challenge that they take on in June is pretty admirable. So, and also with that, they have to raise a minimum of £30,000. So hence why it's an event for only a maximum of 25 people. We want the event to be really, special for people, but it's also from a team spirit point of view. You want to keep that team, quite tight, rather than obviously try and open it up to too many people. So it is a real bucket list event for many people. So hopefully from years to come, it will generate substantial more money in a couple more years.
I really hope so. And these funds that you're raising through these events will obviously be very, very helpful and for a great cause. And you mentioned that Cure Leukemia has the word cure in it. So what is the end plan is obviously to cure leukemia, but what type of time span, or what is the goal in terms of, when?
Yeah, I think that is it's really interesting. It's a constant question. We've got actually a Cure Leukemia board meeting in a couple of weeks' time, and I think that there's so many different forms of blood cancer, and I think really I don't think we'll ever see the day where all forms of blood cancer are cured. And then eventually, most probably. But I think what you're seeing now is there are certainly more options for more people to be cured than ever before. And if I give an example of Jeff Thomas's treatment back in 2003, he went through quite a brutal chemotherapy and stem cell transplant to obviously stay alive. If you get diagnosed with Jeff's condition now, you would mostly just have a tablet, and you would be on a medication style treatment program. So you end up sort of living with the illness, and you can contain it, which is obviously for patients who are obviously under life-threatening fear, I suppose, it's to have these new treatments available is great. But I think what I've seen in the last 10 years, thankfully, so many patients that I've met over the time have now gone back to work and got married and been promoted and living their lives, and joined us on the London to Paris bike rides or done half marathons. So I think there'll always be that ambition that, look, in the next 10 years, I think you can see some really, really phenomenal progress, because there's exciting developments in understanding people's DNA more than ever before. So I think that's where you're going to get to, where people will see what kind of behaviors you expect your DNA to show, and therefore you're going to be in a better position to treat individual conditions rather than what I suppose has happened over the years is pretty brutal chemotherapy on the hope that it will eradicate the cancer that you have in the body. And hopefully you'll see far more great and personalized medicine. So it's an exciting time, and when you talk to the clinicians, they're very excited, but obviously sadly there's still too many people passing away from the illness.
Yeah, but that's incredible work so far. I mean, what you said there, instead of chemo to taking a tablet, that's a huge leap forward.
Yeah, it is. And, and I think it's about people want to get back to living their lives as quickly as possible. And one of the clinicians described being diagnosed with this form of cancer as having a car crash. And you then have to go into this emergency scenario of getting hold of being able to treat this illness so quickly, because it's in the blood. It's such a difficult disease, and that's why so many patients can relapse sometimes, because it's obviously it can move around the body in that respect. So I think, as I said, the more that the clinicians can understand the DNA and the genetic makeup of individuals, you will start to see that more tailored medicine, and like I said, how amazing to be on a tablet-based program rather than having your whole body poisoned through pretty brutal chemotherapy. I
know that you also have a shirt drive coming up.
Yeah, I think so. What we're trying to do at the moment, we did last year with some pretty good successes. We've got close connections in football, and we know that a great way of being able to raise some form of funds is that a lot of people want match-worn shirts from footballers, especially from the Premier League. They're obviously in high demand, and we're fortunate enough to know a number of the clubs in the Premier League. And last year we raised, I think maybe about £15,000, £20,000 just from this initiative quite late on last year. But this year we're trying to go much bigger, get more clubs involved. And obviously the aim of that is to raise the awareness of the charity, but also to give back if people obviously want to, make the auction bid. They're going to get, a pretty amazing collector's item. And we've got a game coming up, one particular one in a few weeks' time, with Crystal Palace versus Watford. And that's Crystal Palace is Jeff Thomas's former club where he was captain. But we also have Ben Foster, the Watford goalkeeper, is a patron of Cure Leukaemia as well. And the Watford players and the Crystal Palace players are all going to donate their shirts from that game, and obviously raise funds for Cure Leukaemia. So that's just one example of, two Premier League clubs giving back, in a fantastic way, because obviously we've got those two great connections with Ben and Jeff, both as patrons.
That's fantastic. And when is this game taking place?
So it's the 7th of May. And
7th of May.
Yeah, 7th of May at Selhurst Park.
And I guess then the shirts are donated and they are for auction.
That's right. Yeah, we'll put them available for auction, and it's a match-worn shirt. So I think it's the auction site. So yeah, we'll be making a lot of noise in and around the build-up to that week. I think Ben Foster, is a very keen cyclist, and as well as being a professional footballer. So I think Jeff, Thomas, and Ben are going to go for a bit of a cycle ride on the Tuesday or Wednesday before the game as well, and hopefully, obviously, that will raise more awareness of what we're trying to do on the Saturday in terms of with the shirts as well. So I think we're very lucky that we've got two very high-profile patrons that want to be so generous with their time and do what they can to raise funds for the charity.
Yeah, for sure. And if the listeners want afterwards or read more about this initiative or maybe bid on a shirt, where can they go and do that?
I think the best thing to do in the first instance is to go to the Cure Leukaemia website. That's where all the main information and then the direction and details will be then sent through there. So it's cureleukemia.co.uk is our website.
Perfect. And we encourage everyone to go in there and read more about this great charity.
Thank you.
This episode is sponsored by InSport Education, the online business school for sport. They offer a range of different courses, for example, Foundations of Sport Business, Private Equity in Sport, and much, much more. As a listener to this podcast, you get 10% off all of their courses using the code SportsManagementPodcast10. Click the link in the description below and sign up today. Talking about yourself and your career in sports, you mentioned before that you have worked the last 10 years at Cure Leukaemia as CEO, but you started a little bit over 20 years ago as head of sales, if I'm correct, at the Southampton Football Club.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I started back in 1999, back at Southampton, and I'd always wanted to get into sport. I'd always loved sport, and most probably the typical play the football and never good enough. But it was always I just wanted to be in sport. I think from a career point of view, I always felt I wanted to get into sport, and I'm a Portsmouth fan. So the local rivalry between Portsmouth and Southampton is quite fierce. So I'd spent my whole life wanting Southampton to get relegated from the Premier League, likes of Matthew Le Tissier and such like, and James Beattie used to be, scoring the goals and keep Southampton up. And I had this strange opportunity to get a role at Southampton, and I had to put my personal support for Portsmouth to one side. And it was a fantastic move. I loved every second at Southampton. I was very lucky the 4.5 years up there that we moved to New St Mary's Stadium. I was a big part of that project. And we also got to the FA Cup final in 2003 against Arsenal. And I was responsible for nearly all of the commercial setup there, but also one of the big parts of the role at the time. I was responsible for all the players' kits and obviously the brand, which was an own brand at the time. So it wasn't an Umbro, Nike, Adidas. It was a club-owned product. That was quite interesting. So when we got to the FA Cup final in 2003. That was obviously the sort of the kit design for there had come from myself and our suppliers, and we were there up against Nike and Arsenal. So it was a great global showcase for us. And sadly, the result didn't go our way, but it was a fantastic event to be part of.
Yeah, I'm sure. And then you moved on to join Nike as a product manager.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, and I think a lot of these roles in sport have a shelf life, and I felt that 4.5 years at Southampton, I'd done nearly everything I could there, and I didn't want to be someone who would stay at a club for too long, because I think that you just need to keep freshening things up, and also within certain clubs, there's not much room to grow. And I just felt that it was time to move, and I was, because of the fact I was so heavily involved on the playing kit manufacturing side of life, I just put a bit of a speculative application in for a role within Nike, and much to my surprise, I got a phone call back one day and went over to Hilversum and had an interview and got the role. So I finished in Southampton on a Saturday. I flew to Amsterdam on the Sunday, and then I was in Miami for a sales conference on the Thursday. So it was a really strange first week, but it was it was amazing to obviously be part of such a big brand whilst making the move from Southampton.
You started with sales, then product manager, and then you went into more the commercial side and became commercial director at both Watford and afterwards Warwickshire Cricket Club.
Yeah, so I think the thing with myself I found with Nike probably is that, and then we had a really good conversation there, is that I think I most probably had too much experience for the role at the time, and I think that for me, I just found that I was in obviously a major organisation. I've been so used to having quite a lot of responsibility in many areas, and sometimes it was slightly frustrating because obviously you're used to being able to move at a certain pace, and you have to respect the size of and the brand that is Nike. But I would have carried on there, but the opportunity to go to Watford as commercial director was exciting in two areas, I suppose. One, it was the fact that I was then responsible for the whole commercial responsibility across everything, which was, again, a big opportunity for me to develop, I suppose. But the other little quirky thing when I went for the interview, which really most probably sort of swung it a little bit, was that they were also going to host the first Elton John concert that he played at Vicarage Road for about 25 years. And obviously Elton John is synonymous with Watford. And one of the big parts of the role was to sort of sell all of the sponsorship properties around that concert, also work with Elton John's management team, and obviously sell the event as well. So I just found that there was just two or three things that were just swinging it in my favour. This was another bit of experience and another challenge going into that sort of concert and ticketing arena, which isn't football, and obviously being associated with Elton John made it even more more fun because of his relationship with the club. So yeah, it was good. Yeah, very enjoyable, and enjoyed my time there as well. So it's a good club, and that's where I got to know Ben Foster when he first came he went on loan from Man United, and we've kept in touch since, and hence he's now a patron of Cure Leukaemia. So there's the world of sport connects, as you know, keeps those connections well.
So looking back at these 20 plus years with your experience from, brands, clubs, sales, commercial director, how has all of these experiences helped you in your current role now at Cure Leukaemia, you think?
What I've learned is football, in any kind of sport, there's emotion. It's a lot of things are driven by emotion, and a lot of common sense sometimes doesn't happen in sport because of emotion. But you also realize that emotions can be used in a really powerful way. And I think that what I've always tried to realize is that you have to realize that each club has its own community, and you should always want to look after that community, even through the good and the bad. And most probably even more so when it's not going so well for you, because it's easy. I think it's relatively easy to sell the Ashes, England versus Australia, because it's such a big game. But when you have other challenges, when things aren't going so easy, you have to be creative. So I think when I took a role here at Cure Leukaemia was that the patients are effectively the people that need our support, and there is that great amount of emotion associated with patients. And for me, I always wanted to make sure that every patient that we treat, or every patient that we engage with, or every fundraiser that we engage with, feels that this is really personalized and valued, as you would or you should do a football or a cricket supporter or any kind of customer. And yeah, I think that's why we've really tried to go above and beyond when we try and get creative with our events, to be different, and also to ensure really do be very grateful for the fundraising that people take and do on our behalf, because it can be so easy sometimes just to take the funds that you get and take them for granted, really. And I believe that we have to be remarkably transparent with what we do. So yeah, I think the emotion is a big one, and I think within sport, trying to plan. I think certainly in cricket you have to plan far ahead more than you do in football. Football is obviously very reactionary, depending on results sometimes. But I think cricket taught me the ability to put a plan in for a year or two ahead, and that's what we're trying to do with the charity: is be strategic about where we want to go. So I've learned those good sort of development planning skills, I suppose.
That's interesting. Why do you think that the cricket requires more long-term planning than football, for example?
Football was, again, comes back to emotions. You could try and put a plan, but if you lose 2 or 3 games at home, or you lose 2 or 3 games, depending on who you work for, there can be that sense of panic. So you either have to start being, do you have to do ticket initiatives to get people into the ground? Do you have to try and find ways of raising more money through, income through the club shop or megastore, whatever it is? And I found football sometimes it didn't even the plan off the field, and therefore it was always being driven by what was happening on the field. I think life's changed most probably since I was within football. You can see what's happened, with the likes of Man City over the years, with how they've had a very clear plan. And then with cricket, because it was very much that, I suppose within football, if you were having a bad time, if it's, the crowd attendances were down, if you then got a big FA Cup game, or you went on a cup run, income that you generated from those events could also sometimes get you out of trouble and make up for some of the bad times. Within cricket, you don't really have that when you're at a test match venue. You have to make sure that the 2 major international fixtures that you have, or 2 or 3 international fixtures through the summer that you have to have, which is the big money earners, you have to make sure that you are totally on the ball for those big events. And if you don't get it right from a customer experience point of view, or from an operational point of view, you don't get the opportunity to claw back that revenue as you may do if you were in football and you went on a cup run and had 2 or 3 extra games. So yeah, I found it was much more targeted to, got to get these days right. Everything's got to be logistically right, operationally right. And so it set itself its different challenges, and I most probably preferred that longer term plan, and you can execute it. And when you see it happen, obviously on a major match day, then you feel that those months of hard work have all been worth it.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, as long as the weather stays kind, that's the only other problem. So you can do all the planning that you want, but if it obviously rains in cricket, then that presents another challenge. But you can only control what you can, can't you?
Yeah, of course. As we know, in UK, it can rain quite a bit.
Yeah, yes, it can. Yeah.
Speaking of some hurdles on the way, has there been any bumps in the road in your career? And if so, how have you overcome them?
I think bumps in the road. I think it was Nike, a bump in the road there. I think it was a challenging time at certain times there. And you just have to sort of take those kind of experiences. And sometimes you might have a personality clash with people, or you have a different view on how things should be run. I certainly found that most probably in my younger years, most probably I was a bit more headstrong than I am now. And sometimes you just have to realize that you can't have, the passion that comes through in your role. Sometimes you do have to realize that you're not going to get everything that you believe is right. And you have to manage that. And I managed that far better when I went to Edgbaston. And the incidents maybe where you would start to, want to push on certain things that you really believed in, you may just have to approach them in a different way than what I did. So I think that was the one. I found Nike again, most probably, that was having gone from such a relatively small organization into a massive organization where it was I think the biggest challenge I found that it was just so email driven. Obviously it's a massive organization. I just found that the lack of personable sort of conversation, it was just everybody had a view on everything, and you would come back from the meeting and find 150 emails on a subject. And I think my view is I always believe, and I suppose hence now as a chief exec, is that if you're employed to do the job, you're there to be responsible for that on your own way. And I think the danger is if you will always have people's views on what people think is the right way. But I think ultimately for me, I prefer accountability. And if something goes wrong, I'd rather it be my decision that's made, that's wrong, rather than a collective that when you've just got too many voices, and that just holds up the decision making process as well, I find. So yeah, I think that was another time where, again, I prefer the personable approach to management.
I can see that. The emotional part is also interesting because I work in the hockey space selling equipment for ice hockey.
Yeah.
And sometimes, you stress yourself out. And then if you take a step back and you think about it, it's like, okay, we are talking about equipment. It's not like life and death.
Yeah.
But from Cure Leukemia, it's actually sometimes life or death situations. So is it difficult from the emotional part to not be too emotional and try to still, have a clear vision and work according to plan?
Yeah, I think the emotion is a big one. And again, I think when I used to be in sport, that if the website went down or the ticketing system wasn't working for whatever reason, you would find yourself finding this is like a major, made so important. But I think coming to the charity are far more balanced, because you realize what is life and death. And what I've found is that these patients and their families are looking for you to be calm when they need calm and support. And they want that reassurance that what we are doing as an organization, as a charity, is the best that we can do. And I suppose for myself, I've found the biggest challenge is that I'm, as I said, very personable. So when I get to meet patients, I get to meet patients and their families. And that comes with its own risk, because sadly, when on occasions, some of those patients that have passed away, I found that quite difficult emotionally, because you feel somewhere along the line that if they had been diagnosed in 2 or 3 years' time, maybe there would be better treatments available for them. And I find that's why I believe that we're sort of most probably, sort of really are duty bound to do everything we can. And that's why I push for, for the fundraising to be as creative and to do as much as we can, because those patients are relying on us to be able to provide them with the best chance of life. So I find that a challenge sometimes when sadly 2 or 3 patients who became friends passed away in the last few years. And like I said, it makes you equally more determined to keep going, because you can do that in their memory as well.
I'm sure it's heavy and tough sometimes, but as you said, used to look back and see how far you've come in 10 years, that must also, feel like it's worth it.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. And like I said earlier, when you see people get married and promoted in their jobs, and you've seen them when they've been in isolation, when they've been having their treatment, it's and you feel proud that you've played a part somewhere along that journey for them.
Approaching the end here, is there something that I haven't asked you yet that you would like to bring up?
The best moment in sport, I suppose.
Okay, let's hear it.
I would say it was the last day of the season at Southampton in 1999, where Southampton needed to win on the last game of the season to stay up in the Premier League. Having spent all those years wanting them to get relegated, I found myself in the bizarre scenario of on a Sunday, desperately praying that the team did what it needed to do against Everton to win. Because if the club had gone down, the stadium wouldn't have been built, and
oh wow,
they would have gone obviously into the Championship. And I think I'd only been in the job 8 to 10 weeks at the time. So everything was geared around the club staying up for the stadium move. And whilst going, obviously opening the new stadium was brilliant, and being in the Ashes, cricket and FA Cup finals have all been brilliant, I still remember that as a pivotal day that I don't know where my career would have gone if Southampton had lost that day, because the stadium wouldn't have been built. And I was very fortunate that those next 3 or 4 years at the stadium with St Mary's gave me the platform to obviously move on to Nike, and gave me the experiences that I had. So yeah, that was I still remember the day very vividly. and the celebrations in the evening, because it meant so much to the club having looked like they were going to be relegated earlier in the year.
It's especially funny there, your story, that if that would have been 1 year earlier, you would have hoped for them to get relegated, and now it had a pivotal impact on your career, actually.
Totally, yeah. And the other interesting scenario, I've turned down Portsmouth commercial director's job twice in my career as well. So I've been offered that role twice, and it was I think because I was so clear I didn't want my personal life and work life to get clouded. So I thankfully resisted the temptation to work for Portsmouth. But yeah, I had literally spent all those years wanting Southampton to get relegated, and spent those weeks obviously praying that they stayed up. And it's bizarre, I suppose, is that Matt Le Tissier is actually now a very good friend of mine over the years, and as a youngster, doing a retail degree at university, I used to listen to him scoring the goals, and obviously I wanted him not to score the goals. So it's very, 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 very strange how life shapes. But I like I said then, I don't know where my career would have gone. I think it would have been really very different. And so I've got a lot to thank Southampton for, and Marion Pahars in particular, for those goals on that Sunday afternoon.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
The last question that I ask everyone is, if you could choose the next guest on this podcast, who do you think that I should speak to?
I would most probably say Ben Foster. I think I've known Ben for a number of years. I think he's got a fantastic approach to playing the game. I think he's gone through some tough times when he obviously struggled at Man United. He's been very open about how he dealt with those. But I think what I could see, I know football over the years has got some very bad press in terms of when players earn certain wages and such like. And I think what I've seen over the years is that the footballers now are doing so much good in the world. Yeah. And I think they can still do, I think they have a real force for good, and we are hoping to do more within the world of football in the fight against blood cancer in the coming months. I just think he's a guy that he realizes that he's got a serious job to do. He wants to do it to the best of his ability, but he also realizes that he has a life outside of football, but he also realizes that he can help others, with that profile that he has. And I think having got to know him over the years, what he's trying to do now as he's coming to the end of his career, he's very sensible, but very personable. And I think you'd most probably enjoy his stories over the years of which managers he's played for and which players he's played for and against. So, I think having known him, I'm sure he'd be a good addition to your podcast.
I'm sure. And it's great for the players who use their platform for something good. And sport for good is an important aspect of this industry as well. Yeah,
and I think this is it now with social media and such like that. They've created in the right way most of the time their own personalities and their own values. And I think that a lot more now people are realizing that these youngsters that are coming through at playing Premier League or international football at such a young age, they are connecting with supporters far better than most probably in recent years. But equally, what I would say is that whilst when I've been in sport, I've been remarkably lucky that every club and the players that I've worked with have always wanted to support what I do. And I think that if you get that connection with the players, they understand how important your role is off the field. And that's what I think creates a good club environment, because the two do need to go hand in hand, because the players do represent the club, but equally I always found that my role was there to represent the club as well. So it was understanding and respecting each other's roles within there.
Definitely. James, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the Sports Management podcast. And I will put the Cure Leukemia website link in the show notes below, so everyone can go in and read more about the great work that you do.
Brilliant. Thanks, Marcus. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you for listening to the Sports Management podcast. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. Also, feel free to leave a comment about what you thought about this episode. If you want to get in contact with me, send an email to sportsmpodcast@gmail.com or hit me up on Facebook, Twitter or Instagram @sportsmpodcast.